Tonight, a Larry Barker investigation into New Mexico's newest tourist attraction. It's a multi-million-dollar government project that had everything going for it except tourists.
In fact, shortly after politicians celebrated that grand opening, they quietly shut it down and locked the gates. So who's to blame? Here's Larry's investigation.
This was probably not the best use of public funds, but officials pushed forward with it anyway.
The staffer here screwed up big time.
Big time.
This is not misspending public money.
Violation of the procurement code is not misspending public money.
If you build it, you will come.
Build it and they will come. It's not just a memorable movie line. Consider this vacant lot on Albuquerque's West Mesa. Construction crews transformed barren acreage into a multi-million-dollar, two-story architectural masterpiece, and then a parade of community leaders and politicians celebrated.
3, 2, 1.
This is a celebration bigger than the West Side, bigger than Albuquerque. This is about the land of enchantment and about the story of America.
You're going to be able to tell your children, your babies, your grandbabies, your great-grandbabies. I was there the day that they opened the Route 66 Visitor Center. Whoa, I'm so excited!
Welcome to Albuquerque's newest attraction, the Route 66 Visitor Center. But don't be deceived by this enthusiastic crowd. Once the hoopla died down and the politicians headed home, reality set in. It's been 3 years since the ribbon cutting. However, as a tourist destination, the project has been a bust. Today, the parking lot is empty, the gates are locked, and the building is closed. Over the last decade, city, county, and state politicians have poured more than $13 million into a facility plagued by mismanagement, financial improprieties, and procurement violations. Eric Olivas chairs the Bernalillo County Commission. How do you explain this building to your constituents?
Well, it's pretty difficult to explain.
In fact, from the very beginning, it had all the telltale signs of a pricey government venture gone wrong. The concept was a revenue-generating complex to include a lowrider museum, amphitheater, banquet hall, commercial kitchen, tap room, and gift shop. But this is not your typical public works project. Here, millions of public dollars were allocated to a venture that had no master plan, no budget, and no oversight. In fact, it was only after funding the visitor center that county officials got around to a feasibility study. And then they ignored glaring red flags and went ahead with the project anyway.
We had a series of failures in that regard where elected officials didn't necessarily look at the facts and really just wanted to make this a reality regardless.
Commissioner Olivas was elected after the visitor center had already been constructed.
We had the information at the time to tell us that this was probably not the best use of public funds, but officials pushed forward with it anyway.
Once construction was complete, Albuquerque's City Council spearheaded the purchase of equipment and furnishings. Armed with a generous checkbook, courtesy of the state legislature, the council embarked on a grandiose shopping spree at taxpayer expense. But behind the scenes, something was amiss. Is there any documentation at the City Council showing that the Route 66 Visitor Center expenditures on this list were questioned or justified?
No.
And were these expenditures by the book?
No, they were not by the book.
The City Council's new budget director, Mark Motzko, uncovered the discrepancies.
The state has a process with capital outlay dollars that require us as a municipality to ask permission before we actually spend the money. In this case, that permission was never asked.
They just did it,
They just did it.
and that's not by the book.
That is not by the book.
For example, this old Route 66 motel sign was donated to the visitor center for display. However, the city council improperly paid $150,000 to have it moved, transported, and refurbished. Thinking there might be concerts here someday, the council spent $58,000 on audiovisual equipment, including microphones, speakers, clamps, lights, mixers, and cables. The electronic gear sits in storage unused. In 2022, the City Council paid $5,600 for a large format color printer that's never been plugged in. Taxpayers shelled out $5,000 for fixtures from a defunct East Central honky tonk. Council staffers purchased dozens of saloon relics at an auction, including signs, chandeliers, a shoe shine bench, gumball machine, and even a clawfoot cast iron bathtub. The material has been in storage for nearly a decade, except for the bathtub, which has disappeared. And then there's the $8,600 spent on t-shirts. The list goes on and on. Add it all up, and since 2022, Albuquerque's City Council misspent more than $320,000. Where was the oversight for the expenditure of these funds?
There was no oversight of these funds.
City Councilor Clarissa Pena supervised acquisition of the building furnishings. Do you know who at the City Council authorized these expenditures?
I do not know.
What's your level of concern that many of these expenditures violated the procurement code? This is public money.
Well, unbeknownst to me, I didn't know that that was occurring. It's concerning that I think that there was probably a level of errors through all our procurement within City Council.
The West Central Community Development Group was hired to manage the facility, and $13 million later, the building opened for business. That was in 2023. It had everything it needed to be a successful tourist destination. Everything except tourists, employees, revenue, brew pub, banquets, weddings, catering, concerts, or a gift shop. Rather than generating income and boosting the local economy, the visitor center has been a significant drain on taxpayer dollars. What went wrong? Well, for starters, Bernalillo County's lack of planning is certainly a factor. And then there's the location. The county built its visitor center a good half-mile from the nearest interstate exit, well off the beaten path. Last year, the county terminated its contract with the West Central Community Group for mismanagement and financial improprieties. The building was closed and then donated to the city of Albuquerque. What's the benefit of that building to taxpayers?
Today, the benefit to the taxpayer right now is nothing.
State Senator Pete Campos has long been an advocate for reform of the legislature's capital outlay process. How responsible is it, in your opinion, to fund a project that doesn't have an operational budget, doesn't have a feasibility study, doesn't have a master plan?
Very clearly, it's not responsible at all.
State Senator George Munoz chairs the Senate Finance Committee. The public officials who appropriated money for the Route 66 Visitor Center, did they act responsibly? Senator, your opinion?
In my opinion, no. Because today, from what we know, is that thing sits vacant with no tenants and no use.
The city of Albuquerque has appointed a commission to determine how the visitor center can best serve the community. The building is expected to reopen sometime later this year.
As policymakers, it's not our money, it's public money, and we have an obligation to make sure that we review all the facts and all the information that we can possibly get our hands on, and then make an informed decision.
Larry Barker, KRQE, News 13.